Hello, my name is Omar Rapisad. It is 6:14 p.m., August 10, 2019. I tweeted a bunch of tweets just now, and I tweeted about remarks outside the window. So I'm just going to make a comment on those tweets. I would not be calling people's names unless what I'm tweeting is the truth. These are people who are actually saying the things that I'm tweeting about. Now, let's talk about sex slave operations. Of course, Epstein operation is not the only sex slave operation that's been exposed recently. We have Bernstein, we have the Bronfman Hollywood-based sex slave ring. So it would not be far-fetched to say that based on everything that I've experienced and observed in the compound and the corporation, in the condominium corporation compound, that has 3 buildings, but my observations were specific to 1 building, and still is. It's not far-fetched to say that there is a ring being operated from the building that involves the corporations in which I'm placed, because the corporations are being infiltrated. And because this is a new thing, the sex slave, or I should say sex slavery culture has pervaded our society recently. And and the fact that we have a lot of new Muslim people of Muslim culture coming into our Western world, who practices slavery, sex slavery, having a wife or having 3 or 4 or 5 or 7 wives, one main wife, and the rest of them are slaves or something like that. It's accepted, but it's illegal. So in a lot of cases, I suspect, I should say, that the cops just turn a blind eye to people who have more than one wife. Bigamy, 10 wives, 2, 10. They wouldn't do anything about it. So the people who are practicing this enslavement, sexual enslavement of women, are looking for wives all the time, and send out scouts to get their wives, because a lot of times these men are rich, billionaires, and they want sex slaves because it's an in thing to do right now. Now, people who agree, and I see on YouTube there are a lot of women who consent for 5 years to being a mistress to somebody who has a wife, and have, tens of women around, and they agree for 5 years, and they make a contract, they get paid. For people who want to do that, that's perfectly fine. I mean, as long as they consent and they're adults and they consent to doing it. It's more reasonable than having these people, these sexual predators who are looking for wives, force somebody into becoming their slave. And this is exactly what's happening here in this building. All the signs and everything that I have been tweeting about and talking about indicates that there is a forcible, people are forced into it, a sexual enslavement program, a forced enslavement program. And this ring is using remote technologies, microwaves, tasers, lasers, infrared imaging, through-the-wall imaging like millimeter wave cameras, These are not very expensive technologies these days, easily gotten through the net, or people with money, through other markets, connections. And since we have billion years, people with billions of dollars behind them in this ring, then of course they can finance the technology needed to make this happen because they want sex slaves. So they're going to go find them, and they're going to give the gangs the technology to go and find them and train them, recruit them, train them, and then turn them out. And when one man is finished with the person for a year, you find another job in another company, and somebody else in that company is going to own the person and turn the person out, and then on to another company. And this is what's been going on, I suspect, for a long time. Only women didn't have a clue that this was happening. I suspect that there's a lot of female employees in a lot of big corporations and medium-sized corporations. These I suspect that it's not going on in smaller organizations, but who knows? But it's more prevalent in larger organizations. I could be wrong. Since it's spreading, it could be any company. It could be in the future, or maybe it's pointing in that direction. So as I was saying, I suspect that this has been going on for a long time, and people just do not know that it's going on because it's going on so subtly, and subtle remote technologies are used that cannot be detected unless you get technologies like this that exposes what's going on. But in order to get to the point to get something like this, to find out what's going on, you have to be made aware, or you have to become aware that it is going on, or suspect very strongly that it is going on. So I think this has been going on for years. Only now, because more and more women are speaking up and are becoming more and more aware of the signs to look for, it's becoming more mainstream, being exposed in the more mainstream media. So I am saying that I suspect, based on my experience, that there is a sex slave operation going on in this building. And I am being sold to people in companies. And I am being remotely accessed. And I'm calling the people's names because when I go to the cops, I've sent emails, I went personally, I called. When I called, I got charged the last time. My voice is being suppressed, which means that I'm enslaved, because a slave that do not have a voice. Now, the comments outside the window, all the nasty, abusive comments, very insulting, sexually insulting comments outside the window, is not only to cause fear, but it's meant to degrade and dehumanize and to keep me in a servile state of mind. This is all part of it, because this is something that's consistent. It doesn't only happen in this building and outside the window. It happens in the workplace. It happens in my family. And it's consistent with a file being transferred around with me, because the same thing is said anywhere I go. Some of the same names are being called. So this is part of what is it means to be a slave. Everybody insults you. Everybody pushes you around. Everybody bullies you. These are signs of enslavement. And the cops will not do anything about it. And the judges in the courtroom is going to take the predator's side. Because in a lot of cases, a lot of the judges are infiltrated and are also taken part in the enslavement. They are purchasers, they are handlers from the ring. So, as I said before, my brother took part in this. In retrospect, I'm starting to realize. I mean, I always argued with him and fought with him, and some very very nasty arguments about my not being married and his misogynistic attitude towards women, towards his daughter, and so on. But as time goes on, and these sexual enslavement rings are being exposed, and also being exposed is what it takes to enslave somebody who doesn't want to be a slave, to force somebody into it. As I'm studying it more and more and more in depth, um, it would seem that my brother was doing this for a while before he died, and he knew about it for a long time before, and he was actually taking part in it. So if that's true, then of course people in the building are doing exactly the same thing. People in the workplace doing exactly the same thing. It's just the same template being followed everywhere you go. There is a team everywhere you go, and everybody around you are informants, and you're isolated because you're not a human being anymore. You're lesser than everybody around you. And it shows in the way they talk to you and they treat you, because you're not a human being, you're an it, you're a slave. You're lower than them. So this is what is actually taking place outside the window. It's not only to get me angry or to make me fearful, it is to remind me that he can do this. Gil Furtado could do this outside the window and get away with it, because in the community, I'm a slave. I'm not a human being. He's allowed to do it and get away with it because the cops are not going to do anything about it, because the cops are taking part in the enslavement. And he knows it. And he's actively working with the cops to make it happen. He's an informant, as are the other building superintendents in the compound, and the cleaners, and anybody else who works with him, actually. Just like in my family, anybody who works with them, anybody who socializes with them, anybody who's connected with them, are going to be given the link and the password or the file about me, or told about what's in the file to isolate me, to change their attitude towards me. This is exactly what's being done in this building by residents, workers, cleaners, patrons who visit the loading dock. So this is all part of the enslavement agenda that is now mainstream, apparently. It's being openly done, or else I wouldn't be tweeting about it and talking about it. Talk to you another time.